If the concept of historical recurrence is correct, the United States is now in the phase that the Roman Empire was right before the first Caesars appeared. Donald Trump's supporters from the alt-right see the current US president as the American Caesar they longed for. Some authors rather compare this epoch of history to the era of the populares in the late Roman Republic, which means that the United States may get its first Caesar in the next 50 to 100 years. Donald Trump is paving the way for this historical circle, also known as the repetition of similar events. I'm your host Kasim, and thanks for joining me for another KJ vid. In this video we will discuss if Donald Trump will become the first American emperor. I'd also like to take this opportunity to encourage you to visit our website kjvids.co.uk and sign up to our subscription plan, which will give you unlimited access to our content and the full transcripts of all of our video reports and a lot more analysis. The United States has been a de facto empire since the end of World War II. It constructed the world order by a dynamic combination of military, economic, intellectual and cultural power. Even though it is so obvious that the US is the major world power, not many politicians openly talk about America as a global empire. The exception is Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who recently said that the former Soviet Republic is forging relations with the greatest empire, the leading country in the world. As such, the American empire will eventually reach its peak and will start declining. In 1918, German historian and philosopher Oswald Spengler wrote in his famous book The Decline of the West that the Western civilization would face increasing primitiveness of political forms and inward decline of the nations into a formless population between 2000 and 2200. He named that period as a modern Caesarism and described it as a victory of force politics over money. Some authors argue that the United States already entered the Caesarism, which is an accepted term for a form of regime in which the state is ruled by a strong, charismatic ruler. It is named after Julius Caesar, who was a Roman dictator, politician and military general who replaced the Roman Republic with a dictatorship. Caesar, which is not his title, though that was just his last name. It is his adopted son Augustus who is considered the first Caesar of the Roman Empire. German sociologist Max Weber was of the view that the position of the President of the United States lies on the road to a pure form of Caesarist acclamation. According to research done by Gerhard Casper, a lifelong leader in academia and an esteemed scholar of constitutional law, Weber argued that every mass democracy tends in a Caesarist direction, in terms of the existence of a direct connection between a charismatic leader and the people, which undermines the power of Parliament. Since Donald Trump is seen as probably the most charismatic US president, some authors claim that his direct appeal to the masses via Twitter can be interpreted as the beginning of Caesarism in the United States. His style of speaking is conversational and often very informal. It is worth remembering the letter he wrote to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in October last year. "Don't be a tough guy, don't be a fool," he wrote, adding, "I will call you later." His style proved to be successful. World leaders take him very seriously, and his voters at home understand him on an emotional level. American author Robert D. Kaplan describes Donald Trump as a populist nationalist, while other analysts think that America is moving in direction of Caesarism, which is roughly characterized by a charismatic strongman popular with the masses, whose rule culminates in an exaggerated role for the military. In his book on tyranny, German-American political philosopher Leo Strauss points out that Caesarism emerges only after the breakdown of republican government. Its rise presupposes the decline of an existing constitutional order. Even though the US Constitution expressly forbids presidents from serving more than 2 terms in the White House, there are already some ideas that Donald Trump should run for president in 2024. Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee made the expensive claim in a pair of tweets in which he said that the US President was eligible for a 3rd term due to congressional investigations into him. Even Donald Trump himself has joked with increasing frequency about continuing as president beyond 2025, when he would be required by the Constitution to step down. Although the 3rd term scenario is very unlikely, there is a grain of truth in every joke. In any case, President Trump has very high chances of winning the 2020 elections and continue implementing his American First agenda. It is worth noting that he offered tough talk and his America First approach in an address to the United Nations General Assembly in September 2019. His famous sentences, "The future doesn't belong to globalists, the future belongs to patriots," can be interpreted in many ways. From the perspective of global energy, the United States needs to assure control over crucial natural resources in order to keep the world dominance in the decades to come. That is why America First can mean that Donald Trump plans to primarily focus on the American national interests rather than to promote globalists' agenda about a hypothetical one-world government. That, however, does not mean the United States will cease to be the imperial power and will stop imposing its will, culture and way of life worldwide. America will hardly change its foreign policy, but will likely get rid of useless alliances and will require from its satellite states to show more loyalty to Washington. Donald Trump will undoubtedly keep doing that in a very transparent way, as he did in the past 4 years. As Syrian President Bashar al-Assad recently said, Donald Trump is the most transparent US leader. He hailed Trump as the best American president for his transparency regarding his stated desire to maintain US control of the Middle East nations' lucrative oil fields. "I tell you, he's the best American president. Why? Not because his policies are good, but because he's the most transparent president," Syria's president said in a state television interview, according to a translation of his remarks by NBC News. All American presidents commit crimes and end up taking up the Nobel Prize and appear as a defender of human rights and the unique and brilliant American or Western principles, but all they are is a group of criminals who only represents the interests of the American lobbies of large corporations in weapons, oil and others, the leader said ironically. He also stated that Trump, however, speaks with transparency to say, "We want the oil," adding, "What do we want more than a transparent foe?" Donald Trump has many foes, especially in the United States. He is often accusing the so-called deep state of trying to undermine his influence and sabotage his policy. According to one of numerous definitions, deep state is a kind of shadow or parallel system of government in which unofficial or publicly acknowledged individuals play important roles in defining and implementing state policy. Some authors claim that for Trump, the deep state is actually the government, or at least those parts of the US government that frustrate him in any way. His struggle against the deep state can be interpreted as a road to a pure form of Caesarist acclamation. Although it is extremely unlikely that Donald Trump will become an American Caesar, future generations may face the United States transformation from the Republican form of government to some form of Caesarism. After all, since history tends to repeat itself, it would be hard to imagine any other scenario. That's all for today guys, thanks for watching another KJ vid. I hope you enjoyed this interesting angle to if Donald Trump will become the first American emperor. Please don't forget to visit our website kjvids.co.uk and subscribe to one of our plans so that you can read all of our geopolitical analysis. Thanks for watching again and see you next time.